Well, today I have a treat for you guys. Not only is my wife Lizzie with us again,
Hi guys.
but today I made it out to Bodega Bay. This is my first time ever being out this way. It's absolutely gorgeous, and definitely gonna go for a little swim in the water here, but it is pretty cold. And we came out here because it's like 90 degrees in most areas of Marin today, but over here it's only 70, so got the free air conditioning. Speaking of air conditioning, guys, you know, people's energy bills are literally skyrocketing all across the country. We know it's been a really hot summer, you know, record-breaking in some cases. Like I've been watching the weather back in Miami, record-breaking heat and humidity every day in the triple digits. I don't miss being there for that, but the problem is when people have to run the air conditioning a lot, simultaneously the energy rates for everybody are going up. This is a recipe for disaster. You know, it's not just Florida either, guys. Like, yeah, it's hot in Florida. People need to run their AC a lot in Florida, but this is going on all across the country in many different states. People are talking about how hot it is and how much their electric bills are going up. And you have a lot of people right now that are trying to pay their bills that are higher than ever on lower incomes than ever. Because later on, I'm going to talk about how so many different companies are trying to pay people even less than they did a couple of years ago. And this is happening in many different industries across the workforce. So not only are people facing, you know, higher bills when it comes to their utilities, higher rents, higher mortgage payments, higher car payments, higher everything, but at the same time, companies are trying to pay people less money than before. You know, some people are taking this to the extreme and they are actually eating less food, you know, not buying as many groceries, things like that, just to make up for the increased costs in their energy bills. I've seen crazy things on the news lately where people are literally boarding up their windows of their houses and covering everything up, and it's like living in a cave in order to cut back on how much they need to have the air running because it just costs so much. You know, they're telling people like, oh, you can just weatherize your home, you know, make sure it's all sealed up as much as possible, which might help, and obviously that's going to cost some money. And they say some people are even turning to solar panels. But I mean, let's face it, if you can't even afford to pay your electric bill now, how are you going to pay tens of thousands of dollars to get solar panels installed on your house? And then if you do, you face other issues like potentially being dropped from your insurance, especially if you put it on the roof, or having your insurance rates skyrocket because of the extra liability. So it's almost no way to get around this right now. And then on top of that, you know, they want everything to be electric soon. You know, the Biden administration wants everything to be electric. Here in California, they want everything to be electric, all at the same time while people's energy bills are spiking. I mean, this is not going to be good for people. You need to have different sources of fuel to power your house and, you know, cool things down. And in the wintertime, people have gas furnaces instead of electric, or gas stoves, things that can save extra money. To eliminate these things would be extremely foolish, guys. Anybody who's in favor of this needs to think twice, because an all-electric future might sound nice and rosy and environmentally friendly, but the reality is producing all this electricity is still very dirty. I went over this with you in a video a couple weeks ago, showing you that more than half of the electricity is still produced by natural gas sources and fossil fuel sources. And on top of that, if you are only relying on electricity, power goes out, or they keep raising the rates with the power company, you're done. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, this is happening all at a time while you have many different industries trying to pay people less than ever before, especially in the white collar sector of jobs, but it's also happening in blue collar industries too. Because according to the website ziprecruiter.com, their data shows that job seekers report roles that used to offer $175,000 and $200,000 a year now are offering tens of thousands of dollars less in salary, all at a time when inflation is ridiculous. The cost of living is higher than ever. I know $175,000 to $200,000 sounds like a lot of money for most people, and it really is. It kind of depends on where you live. But think about it. If you have a family and you have a house payment, you have a car payment, maybe two car payments, one for you, one for the wife, different things like that, all that stuff adds up. And you got to feed 4 people, clothe 4 people. You're not having a whole lot of money left over, even at a salary this high. And now they're starting to go down. And also you're seeing a lot of companies, move these higher paying positions to lower cost cities across the country. Not only for themselves so they can get away with paying less salary, but also because it's cheaper for them to operate businesses. Look at X. They just packed up all their stuff and moved out of San Francisco and are moving to Texas. Same thing with Chevron here in California. They're closing after like 130, 140 years in business, moving to Texas. It's too expensive to operate here, and I don't blame them. It's probably the smart business decision to make. Now, a lot of this is happening because employers are now running the show once again. Employers have the upper hand when it comes to hiring people because you have more people essentially looking for jobs right now than what jobs are being offered. So it gives them a lot of leverage, kind of the opposite of what happened during the pandemic. Check this out. Even hourly jobs that were tough for employers to fill up until recently are now being advertised at a lower pay than just 1 year ago. So all across the board, people are being offered less pay. And if you want to see just how much of a difference it makes, we'll take a look at this. They talked to one guy, 31 years old, who's looking for a senior customer experience role for the last 9 months, and now he's lowered his pay expectations by $20,000 per year salary in order to hopefully find the job that suits his role. And when you take a look at this chart, you guys can see in 2024 how much the year-over-year change in average wages is going down. In retail, we're talking 50%. In agriculture, 25%. Manufacturing, about 20%. Transportation, about 10%. Automotive, maybe like 5 or 8%. Construction, 5 or 8%. The food service industry is even taking a hit right now. So nobody is getting a raise. Guys, I made a video about this the other day, that the raises right now are abysmal. And if you're getting one, you should consider yourself lucky. But even if you are getting one, it needs to be considerably higher than the rate of inflation. The CPI right now is supposedly 2.9%. So that means the real rate of inflation is probably more like 6 or 7%. You need to have a salary increase that's 7 to 10% to even be keeping up with inflation right now. So if you're not making more than 7 to 10% more this year than last year, you are losing money. They talked to this guy who owns 56 McDonald's restaurants in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. Right now, his starting salary for people is $13 an hour. But during the pandemic, they also used to have a sign-on bonus just to get people in and starting to work there. That's completely gone. And now he's actually trying to convince his managers to take a pay cut and go down to $12 an hour. Guys, can you imagine, being a manager at McDonald's working for $12 an hour right now in 2024? I mean, who would do that? Can you even make enough money to pay all of your bills in that position? Probably not. But when you look at it from the position of the guy that owns the McDonald's, check this out. The labor expenses alone at his McDonald's restaurants have now exceeded all of his food costs, which is something that he says has never happened in the 24 years he's owned all these McDonald's. So these are in states that are outside of California. We're talking Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. Imagine what it's like here, where they're mandating people get paid $20 an hour for these same positions. I mean, I don't even know how they're still open, guys. I really don't. They talked to another guy who's looking for a customer experience role, and he used to see many jobs being advertised between $80,000 and $100,000 a year. Now those same jobs are being advertised for only $60,000 a year. I mean, that's a massive pay cut. And I understand that these companies kind of have people by the balls, but I don't understand how people are going to work these jobs and get by. I mean, it just doesn't math out. But it sounds like the strategies for a lot of these companies, they're trying to attract basically new people into these roles that are still trainable and coachable and will take a lower starting pay versus people who have a lot of experience that have been around the block. Like, they don't want to pay for experienced workers anymore. And of course, you still have a lot of companies moving jobs overseas to get away from these higher labor costs here in the US. You know, they're moving more jobs to Mexico. They're moving them to cheaper parts of Europe like Poland, and they can get away with paying half or even less than half of what needs to be paid out here in the States. Now, they talked to this guy, Keith Sims, who works at a recruiting firm in Indianapolis, okay? And he says he's seeing lots of companies move from expensive cities like Chicago and San Francisco, relocate to places like St. Louis, Missouri, Cincinnati, Ohio. And he's telling the reporters here that in the 25 years that he's been working in the recruiting business, okay, he hasn't seen bosses so intent on reining in pay since the 2008 recession, guys. So, you know, what does that tell you? That means that these companies are hunkering down. They know we're going into bad economic times, or we're really already in them, and that's why this is happening. They're trying to cut their bottom line as much as possible to keep their profits in the black, to keep shareholders happy many times, and to try and keep the business lean. You know, and unfortunately, a lot of people are either losing jobs over this or are taking massive decreases in pay at a time when people need far more pay than ever. People like to say it's different this time. It sure is, because back in 2008, when we hit that big recession, you could take a pay cut because we didn't see a major increase in cost of living during that time frame. Things remained relatively stable. In fact, as the economy got worse, the cost of living went down because of how much housing went down. You know, you could easily pick up a house for sale or for rent for quite a bit less by like 2010. So, you know, now it's completely the opposite. Now everything costs far more than ever, and people are taking these same pay cuts. It's not going to turn out well. Salaried tech jobs right now, working with back office and core operations of the business, those jobs used to pay between $110,000 and $130,000 a year. Now they're going to brand new hires for $85,000 to $100,000 a year. So actually, having experience and looking for a job right now kind of works against you, unfortunately. If you guys want like a funny way to deal with this misery in real life, go watch that movie Office Space, guys, because that's exactly what's happening. You know, they bring in the consultants, right? And they figure out who's valuable and who's not. They axe everybody who is getting paid too much or isn't doing enough work for the money, and then they bring in a bunch of new hires that can do the same amount of work for a fraction of the cost. So that's exactly what you're seeing real companies do right now. They talked to another woman who used to be a recruiter at Amazon. She was laid off in 2023, okay? Now they're rehiring for the job, but get this, at a 65% reduced pay. Not even half, 65% lower than it was just 1 year ago. And this is at Amazon, guys, the company that's supposedly doing extremely well right now and makes billions of dollars a year. And another thing a lot of these companies are doing is, if say you went in for some interviews lately and you see the salary was advertised at one rate and you're not getting a call back, well, go and check the job listing again, because a lot of times what they're doing is they're kind of like shunning away all the people that they already interviewed and changing the job listings and lowering the pay because they already have too many people applying. They're looking at it as like, okay, let's see how many people we can get through the door applying for this job at this salary instead. You know, it's kind of just like when you're looking at houses, you know, when you're trying to overbid on a house, it's taking a bunch of offers and the highest bidder wins. When the market's going down, then it's the opposite. You know, you have nobody offering and you have to keep lowering the price until someone does offer. So these recruiters, these companies are taking complete advantage of the labor market right now. And when you hear things like this, it's not really a surprise when you hear other stories like this one. I'm sorry I didn't write down the name of who sent this to me, but this person has a Chase Slate credit card, okay? Now they're sending out notices on these Chase credit cards saying that you cannot use your Chase credit card for any buy now, pay later apps. In other words, you can't use your credit card to go into debt to pay off more debt, okay? That's what people are trying to do. So there's been enough demand, there's been enough people trying to do this, where they actually have to send out notices saying, yeah, if you try it, it's not going to work. I mean, take a look at this message here. Effective October 10th, 2024, you will not be able to use Chase credit cards to pay for third-party buy now, pay later apps. Payments to these installment plans like Klarna, Afterpay, using your Chase credit card will be declined. And it says if you have any recurring payment plans with your Chase credit card for one of these buy now, pay later apps, to change it before you get a late fee and you miss the payment. So that's where we're at with things. I just saw another local story here in California last night. There's a restaurant in Orange, California called Felix Cafe. They're going to be closing down for good after 45 years. And the reasons why the owner cites that they're closing is because, number one, they have a higher cost of doing business. At the same time, business has declined substantially in the past year, which is just another sign of the times that people are not spending the money like they were a year ago, and businesses are being affected by it. All the employees at this place are going to lose their job because the place is closing down for good. It's not like they're being transferred to a new location. And he sold the place to a new restaurant. So maybe they'll have a chance of getting hired at the new place, but maybe not. There's also going to be some major changes coming down the road in the next couple of years when it comes to salaried employees. Okay, this is something else that was brought to my attention by one of my viewers. According to the Labor Department, they say that every worker's time has value, and when most workers work more than 40 hours per week, they get paid more. So there's going to be a new law going into effect soon that affects people who get a salaried pay. They've had overtime protections in place since 1938. And obviously, it's fair that you get paid overtime. If you're working more than 40 hours a week, then you should get paid extra for that time. But that's something that salaried employees usually don't get. So starting July 1st, which has already came and went, salaried workers who earn less than $844 per week will become eligible for overtime pay under this final ruling. And on January 1st of next year, most salaried workers who make less than $11.28 per week will become eligible for overtime pay. And within this new law, they're also increasing the annual compensation requirement for highly compensated employees who are not entitled to overtime. So if you make from $107,000 to $132,000 per year on salary, then they're going to have to increase your pay to a minimum of $151,000 a year starting on January 1st next year, guys. So some people are going to be getting a mandatory bump in pay if you're one of these salaried workers. But the thing is, these businesses are already struggling to pay for these things, sometimes even closing down in the case of this Felix restaurant. How is that going to work out starting next year? How are businesses magically going to come up with this extra money? They're going to have to get it from their customers. Anybody who patronizes that business is going to pay for this increase. So most people already can't afford the prices of today. These businesses are going to be raising prices even further starting next year to compensate these workers that they have to pay more by law. So that means, guess what? Higher inflation at a time when the Fed continues to lower interest rates. Looks like we're going to be going in reverse pretty soon. And to make matters worse, which is good if you're a salaried worker, obviously you need this raise, but it's not good for business and it's not good for people patronizing business due to the extra cost. But starting July 1st of 2027, these earning thresholds will need to be updated every 3 years, so that way they can keep pace with the changes in workers' salaries, ensuring that employers can adapt more easily because they'll know when salary updates will happen and how they'll be calculated. So this is going to be an ongoing thing after next year. Every 3 years, starting in 2027, these salaried workers are going to be getting mandatory bumps in pay, which means mandatory higher prices from businesses that are forced to pay these wages. And listen, I get it, guys. People need to make more money right now, and they should be making more money. But everyone has to also realize that that is going to come at a cost, literally. Literally, you're going to be paying more for everything that you buy because of these higher salaries, because this is government mandated stuff. You know, this is a federal labor law that's going into effect as of now and is really going to start hitting hard in January 1st. And I'm so glad that this was brought to my attention because I haven't heard anybody else mention this, you know, who talks about the economy here on YouTube, anything like that. And this is just yet going to be another inflationary input from the government and make it harder for most people to pay their bills. And if you think things are bad now, it's pretty much guaranteed to get worse by January 1st of 2025. So if you're one of those salaried positions, you better hope that your job doesn't get shipped off to another cheaper labor country rather than get that salary increase, because it seems like that's what a lot of companies are moving in that direction in order to avoid these new laws, essentially. But time will tell. If you're someone who's affected by this, let me know in the comments, shoot me an email, just let me know, guys. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.